Hello, friends. Welcome to Nexus, a smart buildings technology podcast for smart humans. I'm your host, James Dice. If we haven't met before, I write a weekly newsletter on this same topic. It's also called Nexus. Each week, I share what I've learned, my opinions, and what I'm excited about in the quickly evolving world of intelligent buildings. Readers have called Nexus the best way to stay up to date on the future of this industry without all the marketing fluff. You can check it out and subscribe at nexus.substack.com or click the link in the show notes. Since starting the Nexus newsletter, many of you have reached out to me wanting to talk shop, and we have. After a few weeks of those wonderful conversations, I realized I needed to record and share them with our growing community. So here we are. The Nexus podcast is born. This is our chance to explore and learn with the brightest in our industry together. This episode is a part of a new series of shorter, more casual podcast conversations called Friendly Rants. These episodes are quick, 10 to 20 minute episodes on something that pisses us off. Everyone loves a good rant, right? They're called Friendly Rants for many reasons. First, because our Friendly Rants are coming to you from the Nexus Pro community. We're a bunch of friends trying to change the industry together. Second, because we're not here to talk shit on anyone unless they truly deserve it, of course. And third, because we're not here to complain. We promise to propose a solution to our rant every time. This episode of the podcast is directly funded by listeners like you who have joined the Nexus Pro membership community. You can find info on how to join and support the podcast at nexus.substack.com. Without further ado, please enjoy this installment of Friendly Rants. Let us know what you think. All right. Hello, Joe Gaspardoni. Welcome to the show. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Joe Gaspardoni. The most important things you want to know is that this year is my 30th year in commercial real estate. Long time in finance, operations, software, hardware, sort of one of the unicorns in terms of real world experience. Super happy to be here for the podcast, for the rant. It's right up my alley.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So what do you have for us today? Let's hear your rant with all your full passion behind it.
I don't know if I can do 30 years justice, but as I've plugged into Nexus, it's really coalesced this thorn in my brain that has been there for a long time. We're in Montgomery Technologies, of which I'm the COO, is a company that does riser management and secure networks in buildings. And as a result of that, we don't sell solutions other than the core ones, but we don't sell vendor solutions or third-party solutions, but we see them all. We handle them all, we connect them all. And as a result, these buildings come to us for advice when they're considering throwing RFPs out, throwing, requests out there, and they get this input, and then they say, hey, can you meet with these guys? Can you tell us if this is worthwhile? Is this real? So we get these every year, dozens of companies that come through, and essentially we get to see the pitch. And the single biggest problem in our current situation is the people selling the solutions have almost no understanding of who they're selling to. And when you do that, what you do is you put yourself right into a bucket of a vendor. Not a partner, not a consultative sale, right over here. And as soon as you do that, you're with a stack of 1,000 potential solutions and nothing more than that. And you'll be sitting in that purgatory for years, potentially. So the rant is learn the business first, sell to the business, speak their language. These companies, these buildings, they're like mid-sized companies in terms of their spend. So you and 100 and 1,000 other people are trying to sell them solutions. Don't just sit as a typical traditional sale. Get to know your audience and speak their language. And that's like the single biggest thing. You come in as a traditional salesperson, you put yourself over in purgatory. That's the rant. I can't stand it if I hear another person say, we're going to add $2 in rentable value to your building. $2. We're going to add $2 per square foot. It's just like, oh, there you go. You hit the ejector button. You don't even know it.
I think all of us have been in that like sales pitch meeting where the room is just like it's just flat and there's just
Yeah,
something missing. There's like a big elephant in the room and no one quite puts their finger on what it is. So you've given me this rant before several months ago,
yeah,
and one of the things that you told me about was in specifically in office buildings. So this concept applies worldwide for smart buildings, but specifically in office buildings. And you just kind of mentioned the example there. Can you dive in a little bit to that example where a smart building technology company is coming in and saying, we're going to add to your rent income,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And
No, you,
so how is that wrong?
sure. If you're sitting on the operations side, as I have in my career, whatever it is you're saying is being interpreted this way. We're the best, choose us, we're the best in sliced bread. It's almost like magic. You put this box in, it's going to do all these things. Oh my God, we got all this money behind us and we're going to be, and you're hearing that and going, I remember 20 years ago when I heard this about web-based software and how the company disappeared 3 years later. So that translation, by just speaking your language, it's like that, like the old cartoon. There was a Far Side cartoon where the owner is talking to the dog and he's saying, "Oh, you're such a good dog," and he's talking, and the dog hears blah 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 blah, Fido, blah 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 blah. That's the disconnect that's occurring in those meetings. So if you can start where you should, which is to learn their language. You need to be fluent. You have to automatically know what CapEx, OpEx, CAM charges, cap rates. If you don't know inherently what those are, and if you're not fluent in that, then what you're really just telling them is, I'm another one of the same, and you're going to get shunted right over to this side. And we all, you, I, everyone wants this next generation of solutions to succeed. To succeed, you have to start there. And, you have to have patience, but there are strategies to get there.
Love it. Love it. And one thing we're going to do in the future is sort of dive into for office buildings. You and I will dive into like how this actually plays out. And you even have a spreadsheet model that maybe we'll share with everyone in the future. But
Yeah.
I love this rant. So if I was a new smart buildings salesperson trying to sell the latest platform, what piece of advice would you have for me when I'm just getting
Well,
started out?
first of all, I think this quote epitomizes the problem, and you want to avoid somebody saying this about your solution. And this is a real proposed solution in the response. So the response after hearing about this new BAS solution, the institutional investor owner who was sitting there analyzing it said, why the F would we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that may not be around in 3 to 5 years and leave me in a pit of despair? Why would I do that? We've got assets with the lifespans of hundreds of years. So I'm supposed to just jump off the cliff with a new product? Never going to happen. And what's the risk if I do? The prop tech company goes out of business. The thing blows up to one degree or another. I look like the idiot I might actually be for making that decision. We spend more money digging out of it, and I have egg all over my face organizationally. No effing way I'm going down that road.
Wow.
Our vendors may suck, but it's the suck I know.
Oh,
I
man.
just love, like, I had to like go back and re-piece that together because it's like in one little paragraph, it summed up what you're facing. So that's the root problem. What you can do to mitigate that, in addition to learning the business, is the extension of that is get to know, really know the customer. The customer is not the property manager. It's not the asset manager. It's not the CTO. It's all of them. They all have varying degrees of decision-making power. I've seen many times where these guys get a buy-off at the C level, and then by the time it gets to the building, the PMO, most times the property manager, has direct yes-no power over almost every decision. So you've got to really fundamentally delve into these. You need to be meeting with them. Can't go to lunch now, but you want to take these people out. You want to get to know budget cycles and how they work and what the line items look like. You have to really go that deep if you want to be effective in the long run.
Yeah, and this is a place where who I affectionately call smart building nerds get stuck because I feel like us smart building nerds, we're very familiar with how every building is different from an engineering standpoint or from an architecture standpoint. You know, everyone talks about buildings being their own unique snowflakes, right? And that applies to the technology, but every organization itself is also a unique snowflake. So you have
Right.
different roles. You know, in the course, we had two students turn in their assignments and the organizations that they were analyzing looked completely different. One of them had 5 smart buildings titles in their roles. The other one
Yeah.
had none. So it's
Yep.
just like totally
And that's
different
real.
depending
I
on,
mean,
yeah,
that's your fictitious version is actually very parallel to the reality of these organizations. There's outsized influence in different parts of the organization. And so you have to be able to identify it. And then when you're messaging to the asset manager, a use case, a portfolio view, the way you're messaging to them is entirely different from the day-to-day of the property manager, which is entirely different than a regional IT manager who's looking at this from a different view. So is it a high bar? Is it difficult? Yes. It's in many ways the highest bar. It's harder than a lot of other industries because they're a little more tightly defined in terms of where to go and who to sell to. So this sort of disaggregate situation, this diffuse kind of situation, is very difficult to sell into. And it answers the question, why does it take 18 months, 3 years as a sales cycle? That's why. That's what you're up against. So you can do
yeah.
things about it. You can do things about it. There are ways to get there.
I think investors have an issue with this too, because they want a product that is scalable and easy to deploy. But do we have that industry where we have easy to deploy situations at this point? I'm not sure.
It's a mixed bag, but a strategy like partnering or being seen as a partner of larger companies, that's a real powerful way to mitigate the idea that you're alone and small and may go away. So
Hmm.
it was funny. A lot of your podcasts have been instructive that way. Like Brainbox was such a good example, partnering with Schneider. That single thing solved huge number of perception problems from a sale perspective.
Hmm.
That gives you instant kind of credibility and a way to overcome the risk averse situation that you're usually faced with. So that's like a great example of one, sort of recognizing how to build the momentum in an organization. That's another big one. Who really decides things? So there are strategies you can deploy, and we just covered a lot of them. You can make it happen. You just have to be really, really smart about how you go about it.
Love it, Joe. Well, thanks so much for coming on the
Yeah,
show. Thanks for dropping some knowledge for everybody.
always,
And
anytime, man. We're all in it together.
we sure are, especially the Nexus Pro members. We're all trying to change a whole industry together. So thanks for sharing. All right.
Yeah, man.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, take care.
All right, friends. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nexus Podcast. For more episodes like this and to get the weekly Nexus newsletter, please subscribe at nexus.substack.com. You can find show notes for this conversation there as well. As always, please reach out on LinkedIn with any thoughts on this episode. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.